I really do believe that a healthy relationship is created. It's not just something that you find. So let's break down conflict resolution skills. I have seen myself struggle with this a lot because I did not grow up in a culture of appreciation for one another. I grew up in a culture of duty. The hard conversations I find aren't necessarily even hard. They're actually some of the most fun things that I look forward to, because that I have found is truly the key to having such fulfilling, loving relationships in my life.
You're listening to the Soul Whispers podcast. This is your guide to break out of your fears, follow the path that lights you up, and come home to yourself. I'm your host, certified life coach and soul whisperer, Jen Sway. Before we begin, know that wherever you are in your journey, you can trust yourself. You're being divinely guided, and your life is meaningful. Now, let's start the show.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Soul Whispers podcast. I'm your host, Jen Sway. This is Cleo, as usual. And if you're new here, welcome. Today, we're talking all about romantic partnerships. And this is part 2 of the dating series. So part 1 was the last episode, 106, I believe. And that was all about dating. So the actual going through the phases of dating aspect of it. Now we're talking more about the partnership piece. So transitioning from just starting to date and now actually having more of an established partnership. And I really want to start this episode with an invitation for you to use your discernment in this, for you to really stop comparing your relationship to everything that you see and hear outside of you and really go within for the answers, because truthfully, your body is so wise. Your body can pick up on the signals of somebody else, where they're at in their nervous system. And let's say like you're feeling peaceful, right? You're feeling good in your life and you're spending time with somebody who's constantly in a fight or flight response. They're constantly stressed about, their relationships around them, their family, money, their health. They're constantly in this stress state and they are unable to be in the moment and be present with you. You're going to start picking up on that. You're going to start feeling that, right? And that's going to start having negative impacts on you. I have experienced this. I know people who have experienced this. You've probably experienced this within yourself. So this is why I say when it comes to these relationships, oftentimes we go to these other people, we go to outside of us, we go to stories on Reddit, or we just try to figure out like what is the right thing. We try to go to all the experts and we forget that so often our body already is an expert. Genuinely, your body knows when it feels safe, right? And if you have been dysregulated for a really long time, right? If you have no idea what it means to feel safe in yourself because you're constantly triggered and stressed, you're always thinking about how you have to be super productive, always be making money, always go out there, make connections. You don't feel safe when you're at peace. And maybe instead of feeling at peace, you feel bored more often. Then that is a sign for you to really work on yourself and really attune your nervous system back to a normal pacing in your life to come back to that safety. But assuming that you are at a good place in your life, you've listened to the other episodes in this season so far that has helped you de-shame, let go of all the shoulds, have healthier family relationships and all those stuff, then you're probably in a place where you can really start to trust your body. And here's the thing, your body will always give you signals, but you might be overriding it with your mind. There's some complexity and nuance here that I'm going to go into in just a moment, but really start to tune into the person that you're seeing, the person that you're with, or when you are in a relationship. These are the things to look out for. Does your body feel safe? When you're with them, do you feel at peace? Do you feel calm? Do you feel attracted to them? Do you feel a desire to go towards them? Or do you see yourself kind of wanting to pull away, lean back and away from this person? When you are not with them, do you feel like a sense of relief? Or do you feel like a sense of longing for them? Do you feel anxious if you're away from them? Or are you kind of neutral? Are you able to kind of let that be the time that you spend together and let this be the time that you spend with yourself? And that's all okay. When you're in the presence of this person or you're thinking about them, do you get a physical sensation of peace, of love, of patience, of calm? Or are you more confused and uncertain than anything? Take note of all of these feelings, because it's not just one thing or the other that's going to tell you whether or not this is the right fit for you. It's going to be a culmination of all of these things that help you have the data that you need in order to make an informed decision on whether or not this is the person that you want to continue seeing. We're starting with this piece of safety and attunement because I know for myself, this has been one of the most challenging parts of dating and being in partnership, is being able to discern whether my feelings are my feelings or if it's their feelings, or if I'm feeling drawn towards somebody because they're triggering a shadow side of me and it's like this insecure attachment that's being triggered, and that's where like the fireworks and butterflies are coming from, or if it's actually genuinely because I like somebody, it's because we feel such a sense of flow and connection, and being able to really become an intuitive dater and then becoming an intuitive and attuned partner. So if you struggle with this is really important to get to know for yourself and to do this awareness work so that you can feel safe in the entire process and really trust yourself, trust your body and the cues that are coming up for you. So to go into the complexity and nuances of this, we know that the body keeps the score, right? There's a whole book that's written on this, but it talks about how trauma is stored in the body. Trauma can definitely play a role in whether or not your body's perception of the situation is accurate, but it will not lie to you. The key here is to use your knowledge to discern whether or not what your body is telling you is from a conditioned response or from an illusory story that it was created in the mind. AKA when your body is feeling something because your brain is telling you some stories that are based in fear or anxiety or lies, versus when your body is feeling something because intuitively you just feel like something is amiss. The former is like when someone is being nice to you and you want to trust that their intentions are genuine, that they're just there to connect, but then your body is tense up and your brain is telling you stories all the time about like, oh, hey, you can't trust this, or what do they want from you, or what if they're trying to hurt you, and all this different stuff. And especially when you're dating and in a relationship, this can look like, oh, remember when this person did this thing and they were nice to you, but then you just got roped into a 5-year really abusive relationship and that was love bombing, and you said you're not going to do that anymore, and like, what is going on here, right? Like, you're in this heightened state and your body is reacting that way because of the story that you're telling yourself. It's not because the other person is necessarily making you feel that way. It's the way that you're perceiving their actions. And the opposite can also be true because we kind of just familiarize our own pain, right? And so somebody could be yelling at you, gaslighting you, being really verbally abusive towards you, and yet your nervous system can kind of feel weirdly at ease and at calm because you're used to it. You might have gotten used to invalidating your own emotions, being like, oh, well, everyone has a bad day. All couples fight. Like, this is, just something that we're working through. This is just a rough patch. And even though your body is sensing these boundary violations and disrespect, trying to protect you, you override it mentally, and then you enter this state of like mental calm and bliss, but it's not genuinely from the body. When I say that your body is gathering the information, it can be very intuitive, right? You can get feelings that are based on intuition and non-feeling. A lot of times these are based off of the behaviors that you're picking up on, or just like this gut feeling that you feel that you can't really explain, but feels kind of neutral and calm, right? This could be something as simple as somebody changes their opinion on liking the outdoors when they were like, oh, I don't like the outdoors, it's gross, I don't like it. And then the second that you say, oh, well, I actually really like the outdoors, I go hiking like 7 times a year, and then they're backtracking like, oh, actually, no, yeah, like, the outdoors is great. And, I had this really great time this year. I'm like, yeah, like, I love the outdoors. And you're like, that doesn't really feel like an integrity with what you said, right? And you're picking up on that, like, ooh, there's some discrepancy here. There might be some anxiety present with it. They might be trying to please you in some way, right? And you kind of feel that intuitive, like, something's amiss here. And you don't want to just like slide it off. If you're getting ache after ache after ache and you're like constantly being turned off by something, that could be your body intuitively telling you this is just not the right match for you. And that could be as simple as like smelling someone's BO and being turned off. And because biologically we're wired to not want to reproduce with someone with like similar DNA, that could be it, to be like, no, maybe not. Now that you know that you can really trust your body and to become aware of the stories that you might be telling yourself as you're meeting people and as you're dating them, I want to introduce you to the paradigm that I operate from when it comes to dating and relationships, and especially in partnerships, that on one hand has made things challenging for myself because I'm somebody who I feel like has leaned towards not knowing when to give up on a relationship, not knowing when to leave on a relationship, because I do feel like you can make it work with so many different people. You can always make it work. But then on the other hand, really believing that in right relationship, when you're in right relationship with yourself, with source, with others, and other people are doing the same, then there are like these energies that kind of come together and feel aligned, that feel in flow, that feel in ease, that are complementary, and that is the quote unquote right relationship for you. However, only you can discern that. I've always thought that you could make it work with anyone, right? And when I look at stories of, for example, arranged marriages, who is to say that that's not okay, that it's less romantic, that it's not as successful as two people who just met online and like chose each other and wanted to be together? I think when it comes to your intentions and knowing what your intentions is, you really have to understand, why are you in it? To what extent are you willing to stay in it? What relationship rules and standards and paradigms are you operating in? Because that is going to determine the health and success of the relationship, how you really define those things. And I wrote down a bunch of scenarios that I could think of that I'm like, okay, here's the thing. None of these are wrong. And I also was able to even identify tropes that exist in media, which I know like romance movies and rom-coms also, it's like that's not exactly the best thing to go off of. And there's been a lot of challenges that have been created in relationships because we compare it to Hollywood romances. But I bring them up because I think it's important to see that these storylines exist in media, because these are storylines that are such a normal part of our own human experience in seeing the variety of relationship structures that there are, the different ways that people come together, and that there is no quote right way that is going to guarantee that a relationship is successful, that lasts a lifetime, or that is healthy for you. Like there's not that many that are different. Like obviously any abusive relationships in which you can clearly see that there's these signs of abuse going on, whether it's verbal, emotional, spiritual, physical, like all those things, right? I think we can all point out like, yes, that is unhealthy. However, I do also believe that there are all these different ways in which if we have not healed, we continue to harm ourselves and we harm other people within relationships unintentionally. That does not mean that we stay. That does not mean that we take responsibility for other people's healing. That does not mean that we have to give so much grace to other people's and grace to ourselves to stay in a relationship that is bringing out these bad sides of us. It's just something that I want to put into your awareness, because we all need to take more responsibility and accountability for our parts in a relationship so that we can really be empowered in our lives and in our relationships to have the healthy, happy, romantic relationship that we want. I really do believe that a healthy relationship is created. It's not just something that you find. And it takes two people who are both healthy within themselves, who are aware of their traumas, their triggers, and are willing to continuously grow to create that. Because inevitably, two people who are seemingly perfect individuals are going to come together and trigger certain parts of themselves. They're going to be pointed out things to them in which they are now going to need to work and grow on in order to continue staying in that relationship, to make that relationship better, and to grow as individuals. Relationships are huge catalysts for growth, both internal and external. I really believe that it's through these relationships that we're able to go further in our lives than we can ourselves. And especially in romantic relationships, there's oftentimes things that we can build together that we can't build alone. Whether that's a family, building assets together and businesses together, or just having a companion that is really aligned with you, that feels like your best friend to spend the rest of your life with. It's really important to know what it is that you're truly wanting in a relationship. Like what are the number one, number two priorities that you want to get out of a relationship so that you can check in for yourself if you feel fulfilled or not. So think about the couples who are in arranged marriage who haven't been able to meet until like the day of their wedding. Think about two strangers who are meeting for a consensual hookup who have no intention to date, but then maybe they catch feelings for each other, right? Maybe they just vibe really well. Think about two best friends who have been friends for their entire lives and finally decide to risk it all for the potential of a lifelong loving relationship. Think about an unlikely pair who are opposites, but then start to see similarities and share values between them. Think about a married couple who decides years down the road that they want to open up their partnership so that both of them can explore their sexual desires and their needs. And it's coming from a place of wanting to help each other and meet those needs and those desires. Think about a young high school couple who are committed to weathering the changes and challenges that come from dating in college and growing up together. The couple that wants to stay together through those things, through the growth, through the evolution and beyond. Thinking about a couple with an age gap that are all legal ages, by the way, who come together because they want the same thing out of a relationship. Think about two people of the same heart and faith, but who come from completely different upbringing, socioeconomic classes, and career paths, and they collide at a time in which they're both open and ready to explore one another. Who is to say that these couples will make it or not? And you can try to make as many assumptions as you can about this and logic your way through each one, use statistics and probability, but at the end of the day, nothing will ever be 100%. And as much as we are humans that are wired for negativity, I also believe that we are souls who are having a human experience, who are just having this body in this lifetime. And when it comes to love, our souls are wired for hope and for truth. There is no judgment of good or bad or right or wrong. We are wired to want to make things work. We are wired for love. And we love to risk it all. We love to risk it all for love. And even when we don't, oftentimes I find that there are a lot of people who want to be the type of people who want to risk it all for love, who want to trust in love, who want to get out there and put their heart out on the line again so that they can receive and feel alive, and so that they can give the love that they know that they're capable of giving. We're wired to want to be seen and to want to love freely and fully. Only you will know at any given moment if a relationship is good enough for you and if you're feeling these ways. And this is really going to come down to your ability to define what does a successful relationship feel like to you and have those come to God moments often with yourself. And if you're not somebody who believes in God, or you believe in source or the universe, or you just trust, something else within yourself, then that is the thing to come back home to at different points within your relationship, to really check in with yourself and see if you're fulfilling your own desires and your own needs. My intention in this episode is not to tell you how to be in relationship, how to be in partnership, but it is to show you the skills and the tools that I think are fundamental components in any healthy relationship, and for you to use your own personal power and discernment and take responsibility and accountability for yourself to show up fully for your relationships, to have the relationship that you desire, and so that you can feel the way that you really want to feel. You have your own unique life, your own unique situation, your own unique set of desires, triggers, and traumas. It's going to take discipline in wanting to raise your vibration so that you can continuously show up in love. Remember, it starts and ends with you, so embody the love that you want to receive. We already talked about cultivating safety within your body so that you can trust yourself, and we already talked about how there is no one relationship structure that works. So now I really want to dive into connection to your personal power. There is a beautiful concept called the power of one. And the power of one I heard from one of my relationship coaches, Maggie Reyes, although I don't know if she's the one who actually started it. I think that this is maybe can be found in different scriptures in different places throughout time, throughout history. But the power of one really is about how you have your own power to change any dynamic of a relationship. I've already talked about this in episode 104 about relationships with your family. But when it comes to your relationships, oftentimes I feel like so much struggle comes from our own lack of connection with our personal power, or our overuse of power and wanting to create more power for ourselves. Like when we don't feel connected to our personal power, we stay in relationships far longer than we need to because we don't believe that we can actually go out and create something better. When we feel like we need to control somebody else, manipulate somebody else through people pleasing or through narcissistic tendencies or through gaslighting, whatever it may be, when we see ourselves wanting to try to control other people's behavior, that's also because we have a lack of power in ourselves. We have a disconnect from our own powers and we don't respect other people's power. We don't trust other people to do with their own personal power the right thing or the good thing or do the healthy thing. And so we're trying to impose our own will, our own power onto theirs, saying that you're not enough, you're doing something wrong, and let me try to fix you, let me try to help you. And that is also partially because we're trying to inflate our own sense of power, our own importance in somebody else's life. When it comes to a partnership and the dynamic between them, regardless if you're a woman or a man or you're non-binary, I'm going to talk about it from the lens of masculine and feminine energy in the relationship between men and women. But you can apply this to your own relationship just using whatever terms works best for you or whatever you resonate with. Me personally, I've always resonated with more masculine energy than feminine energy. And I'm starting to kind of see that in my relationships, in which any times I've tried, like quote, try to be in my feminine in the way that I contemporarily think about it, it doesn't feel fully aligned and authentic to me. And that's something that I'm going through in my own journey of navigating. Is that because I still have like wounds within my feminine nature where I don't feel like I can trust that part of me that is soft and surrendering, but also understanding that feminine energy is not just like soft. The feminine energy also has like the warrior archetype as a sage, is extremely wise, and as an oracle is extremely powerful. And so me being able to show up fully in my feminine power may even seem masculine from the outside, but really that's because I am so in touch with my intuition. I'm very decisive. I'm very strong in my boundaries. I'm very strong when I speak. And so is that assertiveness me being in my masculine, or is that just me being fully empowered and embodied in my feminine energy? And I think the challenge for me has been finding a partner in which they are connected to their feminine energy, but not necessarily operating in their feminine energy. They're still grounded in their masculine, but it may also look different from more like externally what masculine behavior would look like, right? Men that I tend to gravitate towards, that I have good relationships with, are people who are extremely vulnerable, connected to their emotions, are able to care for me in an emotional way. And so I want to break this down for you too, as far as if you're confused on the cultural narrative that men are the pursuers and that women are the choosers. I believe in that, right? I believe that men pursue and women choose. However, this being said, we are all so disconnected from our personal power. Even things said with good intentions, like choose people who choose you, can be misconstrued with the underlying intention kind of being like, oh, you only get to choose from the people who want you. And if you want somebody and they're not showing these signs that they want you, then forget about it. It still paints women kind of in this light of like, oh, you can only choose from this available pool of men who are interested in you, and then can give rise to that like pick me sensation, right? And then like, trying to impress. And that's not the case at all. And then for men, I feel like there's also been this weird dynamic going on of men who try to pursue women that are like kind of really honestly like out of their league. Like I think about the random internet trolls and like the men on the internet who are all calling Robbie Margot mid when Barbie came out. And it's like, you're only calling her mid because you like wouldn't even have a chance to get close with her. You wouldn't even have the chance to date her. Like, who are you to even call her mid? And like, look at yourself, right? Like there's such a lack of self-awareness there. And I think there's such a fine line of like, shoot your shot and also have realistic expectations. Like, shoot your shot, yeah, go for it, but don't expect every single woman to like give you attention and time and to like give you a chance with her, So this all being said, please be connected to your own personal power in whatever way feels authentic to you. Power to me feels a lot like respect for myself. It just feels like this really rooted and genuine like calm. It feels like I can put my shoulders back, stand up straight with my chest out, and being able to project my voice, speak with assertiveness, speak with clarity, and come from a place of like empathy, compassion, and love, while also having really strong judgment and discernment for myself, and genuinely just being true to my standards, right? Regardless of whether or not somebody wants to perceive it as high or low or whatever, like I've really been able to start training myself that my standards are just my standards. It's my baseline. Regardless if that feels high to you or low to you, that's just my standard. So now externally, men might pursue a woman and that women will choose that man. Energetically, especially in partnership, what we see is that there's another form of pursuing and choosing that is coming through in this relationship. The energetic pursuing and choosing might look more like commitment and leadership energy, where men tend to be the external leader for a relationship and women being the emotional leader. I like to think of it more of like men being able to be the executor and women being able to be the guide. The tendency for masculine dominant energy is that when they meet a feminine counterpart, it activates this part of them that wants to grow, that wants to serve, protect, and provide. When the man has chosen a woman, now the container is activated, right? It's like a green light comes on where like it used to be grayed out. Like now you can actually go and select that option, right? Like think about it like a game, right? Now you can actually go and select that option because he is online, right? Because with that commitment, that is how safety and security is created in a container. Otherwise, there is no ability for a relationship to thrive. There's no foundation for it. So now that he has chosen this woman, he has committed to this woman, he is going to be loyal to this woman. Now there is a chance, right, for this feminine to flow, to fill this container up. The feminine dominant energy in a relationship is going to pursue a vision. And this vision for the relationship is created because she is the oracle. She is the high priestess. She is the empress. And he, on the other hand, is her counterpart, right? He is the warrior. He is the magician. He is the king. He's able to create. He's able to go and fight for. He is able to protect. He is able to execute on these guidances, these commands, these visions that she sees that maybe he doesn't see for himself, but that he can trust, right? When a woman is operating from her feminine power, she activates the relationship in a way where it creates fertility and growth. In this container, she's able to see the unseen. She's able to give rise now to the divine in the man, where now he seeks more purpose, right? Now he is able to challenge himself to grow more. Now he's maybe being triggered and facing his own shame, his own inadequacies, his own desires to face maybe his core wound of wanting to be mothered and really being able to step up and also provide emotionally. There's mutual healing that occurs when the divine feminine is in this container and she activates it, because now with her being the oracle, her being the visionary leader for this relationship, she's able to see this vision in which now both parties need to step up the plate in order to create. The masculine needs to be able to trust the feminine. The masculine needs to be able to open up his heart. He needs to be able to receive and open up to love, to give love. He will not take her challenges to grow as threats or as defensiveness or as attacks on his integrity or his character. They're not there to emasculate him. As long as the feminine is doing her part in being able to not come from a wounded place, a shaming place, right? She's just inviting this growth in, then he's able to trust those things. And he sees it as a test of his integrity. Does he just say that he will do anything for her as long as it's external and it's easy for him and it's convenient for him? Or is he willing to really sit with himself, face the uncertainty, face the challenges, and do the work that is required of him to be vulnerable, to heal, and to fill her needs and maintain the health of the relationship? Now, when you're connected to your personal power, your partner's connected to theirs, and you have decided that you want to come together, commit to each other to grow something beautiful. Now we're looking at the soul whispering philosophy and applying that in here. And if you have listened to episode 101, where I break down my core life philosophy of virtues, values, and visions, I highly recommend listening to that, because that is the foundation for all of the last episodes and including this one. And this is one of those things where you really start to see it being applied, not just in your life, but in other people's lives, as well as partnerships, so that you can come together and create something beautiful. And what you're looking for here within a partnership is to have matching virtues, complementary values, and aligned visions. Notice how it's not the same across the board. So let me break this down for you. The first thing of matching virtues. This is essentially saying you're both good people. This is like you're both people who are of integrity. You're both people who choose to love and who are compassionate humans. You're both adventurous souls. You're both wise and curious. And this is going to vary from person to person, and this is where soulmates are found. Your souls resonate with each other because you share similar vibrations, okay? You guys are operating from similar virtues. And it's not that like, oh, an adventurous person lacks integrity, or that somebody who is wise, doesn't value like hard work, right, or service. It's that whatever is dominant for you, right? This is why we are all different and we're all so unique, is that we have our own individual essence, and it's that predominant force is going to show through, right? Like somebody who is really adventurous, who's always traveling the world, who wants to be digital nomads together, who wants to like go visit every single national park, is going to be very different from somebody whose virtue is to be led with like love, compassion, and nurturing energy, and maybe is really here wanting to build a family unit to bring that much love into the world, right? Like it's just going to be different. None is like better than the other. It does not make one person more virtuous than the other. This is about having matching virtues, because that is going to be what's important. I think colloquially, when we see people talk about having the same values as somebody, that is different. Okay, that I think is less important. That's why I say you want complementary values, not the same values. This may be hard to see, right? The virtues of somebody may be really hard to see, especially if you haven't healed yet or the other person hasn't healed. Because if you have not done the healing work that has made you feel like the world is unsafe, that you can't trust other people, that people are bad, that people are out to get you, or that you're a bad person unless you do X, Y, Z correctly, right? And you're operating from a place of shame, it's going to be really difficult to see the good in others, because you haven't learned to see the good in yourself. When you have learned to see the good in yourself and really trust that you are a good person, it's a lot easier to be able to recognize that in others. I talked about this in a previous episode about how we are mirrors for each other. How just in life, when we meet other people, like if we're triggered by somebody cutting us off, we have to also see ourselves and like see our anger and realize, oh, well, if we do that for other, like if we do that to other people, like, oh, we're just in a rush, let me just cut this person off real quick, and we think that's okay for us, and we don't see how that also might trigger somebody, right, and make them angry, then we're living in a really like selfish mentality, right, where we're not taking accountability. It's okay. It's not like, oh, don't cut people off. It's just like recognize, like, if you get cut off, maybe don't be mad, right? Because you've done the same thing, and you understand that you have compassion, you have empathy for it. I find genuinely that there is good in every single person, and if somebody is coming from a place of malicious intent, then obviously like they have a lot to go through, and it's not to dismiss any of those things. I just see so much like people who are manipulative, abusive, or like quote evil, like they have evil within them because we have evil within ourselves as well. Like evil exists in this world. They might have like a shit ton of triggers and whatnot, and that doesn't mean you have to like necessarily give grace to that, but it's understanding that it just exists, right? There's also people who are just like hurt people, not from like intention to hurt them. They're honestly doing their best with what they were given, and they're just operating so much from themselves, from their own life experiences, from lineages and generational trauma, and they're operating from a place of fear, of scarcity, of abandonment. And if you got into a place where now you're able to see the good in other people, and you do see that like, okay, there are so many good people in this world, you don't have to be with every single one of them. This one has also been a harder one for me to see in recent times because I want to see the good in everyone, and I do see them in their highest light. I see everyone in their highest potential. It's part of what makes me such a great coach, is because I'm able to guide people because I see them in their highest light and truth. I see their vision and I believe in them. I believe that they can achieve it. I genuinely have that like stronger belief in them that I'm like, everything else doesn't matter, right? All of the delusions, all of the doubts, all of the fears, I'm like, oh, that's okay. That can be taken care of because that's not actually true. And in partnership, the thing is like, yes, everyone has a potential to grow and to heal and to be incredible people and partners. That does not mean that every single person is going to be the right match for me and their vibration currently in where I'm at in my journey, because I still have a lot to grow, or in theirs, right? If you struggle with this, especially if you're a woman and you have done the whole like believing that you can help heal or fix somebody, and even from like a more conscious place of wanting to be able to be somebody who allows somebody to grow with you and like match you where you're at, and maybe they're not like perfect right now, but you're like in that of waiting for them to kind of match you and you're still working on yourself, I also still want to invite you to reflect on that, because there's nothing wrong with being the catalyst in somebody else's life. I think we have had a lot of catalysts in our own lives, or we meet people who are really happy, who are really fulfilled, who are in alignment, and we go like, wow, that's incredible, that's really inspiring to me, and I don't know, I want to be like that, right? Like we all need those people, and maybe we can be that for other people, but if they're not meeting you where you're at, you're not obligated to stay and to help them grow and to do that work. In fact, oftentimes it's because you're not in their life that you just maintain this picture of like, you know, inspiration, divine light that allows somebody to activate themselves and want to grow and heal. And because we're not perfect, right? Sometimes, even if you're that person to be that catalyst, and then you stay and then you become bitter or resentful, or there's this miscommunication, there's these expectations, and there's all this stuff that happens, then, you know, you're not that potent, like pure light anymore, because you have that darkness too, and that darkness just gets shown. So again, use your discernment. When it comes to having complementary values, this is where things get to look different in every relationship, okay? This is also where I think polarity occurs. Maybe both of you value community, but the way that you value community and the thing that is rooted in like what shows through your virtues, through your soul essence in community, is going to look differently. Maybe your contribution to your community is through your work versus your presence. And what I mean by this is, think about the person who contributes to their community by being an expert in their field, right? Who is a top-notch scientist, who is an educator, people who are visionaries or conscious politicians or spiritual leaders, if those exist, right? Whose work directly contributes to the fabrics of society and community at the large, right? And then there are people who are mothers, who are fathers, mentors to their community, little league coaches, people who are volunteers, healers, body workers, and even 9-to-5ers who their contribution is to their direct family or their community that surrounds them, that they see in their day-to-day or like normal day living. And that is what I mean when I say your values are complementary, because if you had two people who had the same exact values in the way that it shows through similarly, it's like, for me, I think about this with myself, where I'm so deeply within this world of healing, of spirituality, of growth, of mental health, of psychology, of human design, and like I'm so deep in this world that there's a lot of value in that I can bring to a relationship where somebody is not as well versed in those things, right? It's great if someone can be well versed in certain areas of that, like somebody who's well versed in functional medicine or in body work and all those things. Like I can learn a lot from them, right? And they can learn a lot from me. And at the same time, we live in the context of this world, right? Like we live in a context of this society, and where I am in California, in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, where things are hella expensive, right? Like that things like money matter, right? And being able to afford your life is a really important value here. So me being able to do my work that I'm building, right? And where society is shifting to be able to consciously value those things as much as somebody might value like an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, right? I've just seen for myself that my pace has been more slow and steady than more exponential of somebody who has like more of that traditional route path. And that's not to say that that means that I need to be with somebody who has a traditional job like that, or that means I am doomed forever to not make as much money as like a mechanical engineer, because I think I'm going to be able to far surpass that, low-key. But it shows through in things like, for example, I'm not great with finances, right? Or in my previous relationship, like I learned a lot about video editing from them, and I was able to learn about audio from them and all the stuff that was able to complement the things that I needed within my business, right? And with the person that I'm with now, it's like, okay, yeah, like I'm not as like strong in finances and what's going on in the world and like all that type of stuff. And like I'm not. And them being able to keep a pulse on that and being able to keep a pulse on that like external world can be really complementary. Traditionally, you see this as the predominantly like man or masculine energy being very committed to their purpose and their success, and then women being more committed to the family and to nurturing community and relationships. Now in modern day, where we're seeing the shift where women are awakening to their power, to their own personal missions, and they are wanting to create aligned businesses, and they're wanting to create more conscious partnerships and all these things, men are also needing to match that energy and awaken themselves and raise their consciousness. It's not about going back to the trad wife thing, right? It's like, no, we're actually raising consciousnesses in which now men are also awakened to a deeper level of love that they want to be able to create for themselves, be able to provide and nurture in other ways as well, and step up. We as humans are meant to evolve, and I think with our souls starting to come to light and consciousness shifting in this way, we're really seeing this evolution where it's not about traditional norms or like modern norms or anything like that. It's about really seeing what feels right and authentic to you based off of your own individual soul's purpose and mission and what you want to prioritize in your life, as well as what can be achieved within a relationship. How do you want to support each other? And that goes into the third thing, which is aligned vision. Now, the thing with alignment, you can think of this as two paths that kind of work with each other, like side by side, right? Parallel streets. This does not look like the same vision. This does not look like compromising one or the other person's visions. Aligned vision is about alchemizing your own visions for your lives, because we've already talked about how your vision is something that you want to be able to detach from, right? It's that you're detached to the outcome because you're attached to the feeling of it. You are resonant and a match for the feeling of your vision, where you want to feel happy and abundant and successful and loved and valued and all these things, which is great. And the way that it comes through is going to maybe not look exactly the way that you want to. So especially in partnership, when you've committed to each other, it's important to allow space for the alchemization process to happen, where now you are co-creating, you are collaborating with each other, not compromising. I have a really popular TikTok where I talk about my views on children and how my views on children have changed, because I was somebody who was very adamant on never having children. I used to teach golf when I was younger, and I used to teach to preschool, elementary, and middle school students. I taught some adults here and there, but just teaching those age ranges and seeing the chaos of that, and then now my sister having 2 kids herself, and seeing how chaotic my nieces can be, I was like writing off kids, right? And now in this stage of my life, and also going through the relationships that I've gone through, I've opened myself up to the idea of being open to having children, but with the right partner, right? Like I really want that container to be with so much love that if that vision can be created from a place of we love each other so much, we have so much love to give, we have the space and the safety to give life to another child, right, to a new soul, and to steward that soul into this existence, then awesome, like sign me up, right? Like I'm here for that. However, it's really that like alchemization that has to be there with the other person's intention and their presence there for me to be able to feel that. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay too, right? Like if the alchemization of our visions is that we serve the community, we go really deep into our purpose and mission, we travel the world, like we have a really loving and safe and homey nest, like that's awesome too. I think with her aligned vision, where this comes down to is really getting clear on what a successful relationship looks like to you, right? What does a successful relationship look like to your partner, and being able to talk about those things, being able to come together to see what does success mean for you. It might be like that having a lifelong relationship is the vision for both of you, that it's a testament to the commitment, to the loyalty, to the love that you have for each other, this commitment to growth and to those vows. It might be a religious thing, it might be a spiritual thing for you, it might just be because that's what you want, that's what you feel safe in. To me, a successful relationship is not really necessarily about how long it is. It's more so about how it feels throughout the time, right? How it feels day to day. If you're able to choose each other through those times, if you're able to maintain respect for each other, if you're able to grow and evolve together. I really wanted to bring out the best out of me, and I want to be able to bring out the best out of my partner. I wanted to be able to be a dojo in which I can grow and, see my shadow sides and be able to alchemize that and be able to help bring somebody else into their light as well. It's about being able to support each other in each other's dreams and being able to have, those aligned dreams for each other that you want to experience. I think a relationship in which you can focus on growing, but also focus on being present with each other is one that you can really cherish. Now, within that, right, the vision for it builds day by day. It depends on how you show up for yourself, for each other. And I think the thing is, if you're losing yourself within the relationship because you're so committed to showing up for the other person, for the relationship itself, for the sake of the vision, or you are so focused on yourself and you're unwilling to let go of certain things, like you cannot or are unwilling to make space for the relationship and for that collaboration energy, then there is no vision that can be created. This, I feel like, is as simple as every day asking yourself, do you choose them? Do you choose this partnership? And are you also able to choose yourself? And as long as the answer is coming from a place of love or commitment or desire, and not from a place of fear, obligation, or even complacency, then I think you are good to go. To me, those are the fundamentals of a healthy relationship. To me, it is truly those three things that is the root for everything else, right? I think that is the foundation for creating safety in a relationship, for creating secure attachment, even if both of you have your own insecure tendencies. If one person's more anxious, one person's more avoidant, or if one person's secure and the other person is disorganized, right? Like, I think that those three things, and that's why my core philosophy is still a philosophy, is that this is fundamentally what I believe will work. And as long as we are active participants in our lives, we are evaluating these things throughout our partnership, then okay, we're going to be able to make it work, right? Whether it's challenges within finances, challenges within sex, challenges within communication, I think if you are to root into, okay, we have this aligned vision for a healthy relationship, and we are both people who lead with love and integrity, we're people who want to be honest people, and we have these shared values of this relationship, for example, and having a family, or wanting to create impact in our communities in our lifetime, then it's really easy to be like, okay, well, for the betterment of ourselves and for the betterment of our relationship, of course, we're going to be able to navigate conflict effectively, right? Like, we're going to need to learn those skills. If we don't have them, we're going to want to learn those skills, because that is in alignment with what we set forth in our virtues, our values, and our vision. It's that simple, right? Like, there doesn't have to be any defensiveness. There doesn't have to be any resistance to growth, because you have been able to clearly set these things out. What I see as a problem, which again, I have talked about in so many previous episodes, and in episode 101, I talk about the challenges that happen and why we're so fucked up as a society, because we're so attached to the vision. We're so attached to the not breaking up. We're so attached to, a good relationship means one that lasts for an entire lifetime, and one where, you're not fighting. It's one where everyone's doing their thing. The woman's doing her part, the man's doing his part. And if anything, those things go wrong, then, well, all hell breaks loose. You get to criticize each other. You get to, berate one another. You get to fight. You get to do, you are, in the right to cheat. It is so beyond ridiculous what happens when we are misaligned with ourselves, when we do not know who it is that we are, when we do not want to give space and give grace to the other person and actually get to know who the other person is, when we have assumed like similar values and matched virtues, when we have assumed those things because we have just decided, well, this person looks great on paper, or this person I'm attracted to, or this person wants the same things as me, right? We like ignore everything else, or we just assume that the other stuff is going to be okay until it's not. And that is why conflict resolution is like the number one skill set that I think everyone needs to have when it comes to dealing with people in general, but especially in partnerships. And the resistance that I see to creating healthier communication is often because we have it so messed up in this like attachment to the vision, and then not really caring so much about the values and the vision or the virtues of somebody, instead of going in this line that I set forth in this philosophy where we want matching virtues, complementary values, and aligned visions. So let's break down conflict resolution skills. I think this fundamentally comes down to honest communication that is rooted in emotional intelligence as well as being trauma aware. Okay, you want to be able to work together as a team. And when I say be honest with emotional intelligence and trauma awareness, it means that your honest truth could be like in your head when it's unfiltered is you have so much healing to do, you are incredibly defensive, and this is not a healthy way to communicate, right? But if you were to tell that to somebody point blank, and let me tell you, I did this, okay? I did this and then reflected on it, and I was like, ooh, that doesn't feel super aligned to me, because I was being honest and direct, but I wasn't coming at it from a place of like love and empathy. I was coming at it from a place of like, I'm telling you, this is what it is, which oftentimes is the sneaky way of contempt showing up, okay? So let me tell you this, right? Like, you can be so convicted in what your truth of the situation is, and that is your honest like expression of it. That's okay to notice. However, when you are in a partnership with somebody who you care and you love for, and you want to be heard and you want to be received in the right way, you want them to be open to receptive, and you want them to be receptive to what you're saying, to be able to actually process it and go through their body without their nervous system being triggered. This is where the quote work comes in. This is the actual real work that so many people don't want to do. And trust me, I see my own resistance to it, because it can feel tedious. It can feel like so much. It can feel like, oh, we should just get it. We should just be able to say what we want to say and you just understand me, right? But this is where I say it needs to come from emotional intelligence and trauma awareness. If your honest truth is that you want to tell somebody you're getting defensive right now and they're already defensive, use that emotional intelligence skill to see that if you were to say it that way, that might make them even more defensive, because now you're labeling them. Now they're going to take that as even more criticism, that their reaction is wrong to their reaction, right? A really great framework to navigate through this dynamic is to look at the Gottman's 4 horsemen of relationships. And the Gottmans, if you don't know, are an incredible resource for having healthy communication, for having healthy relationships. They've done so many studies on so many couples, and they have really great information, tools, and techniques to help navigate conflict, to help have healthier, happier relationships. I love them so much. I'm obsessed with them. I've listened to so many podcasts with them. So highly, highly, highly recommend the Gottmans. But this idea comes from them. We're looking at the 4 horsemen, which are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism is when you are verbally attacking somebody else and their personality or their character. Like, you never put away the dishes, you always forget your chores, you're so forgetful, you're so lazy, whatever it is. It's assuming their intentions and assuming them negatively and then bringing them to light, right? It's an attack. So instead of doing this, it's about being able to have gentle startups, right? When you are feeling hurt, when you feel unseen, when a need has not been met, when a desire has not been heard, it is being able to come from an I statement rather than a you statement. And so this looks like, hey, I feel unseen, unheard, unfelt. I feel stressed or I feel anxious when you say this thing, when you do this thing. I feel like when I tell you I want to talk about something and you say not right now, I'm busy, that makes me feel really unseen, like you don't care about our relationship, that I'm not a priority to you. And the story that I'm telling myself is that this relationship is not going to work out. That statement too, the story I'm telling myself is also really helpful in not making it the other person that is like doing something wrong. Now, here's the thing. Somebody might meet this with defensiveness still. Somebody still might see those things, even though you're talking about yourself, right? And it's coming from this place of, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I'm not trying to put the blame on you. Somebody might react with defensiveness because they just don't want to be seen as the bad guy. I think this is really important to be seen. And I saw this within myself because I used to be so incredibly defensive in my relationships. And I really had to learn where that was coming from. And it was all because of like shame, of inadequacy, of this fear of being seen as bad or wrong or like the bad guy, right? Like I just did not want to be seen as like I was doing anything bad, or that I was a bad person, a bad partner. I didn't want my shadow sides to be seen of like how I could like be angry or get like emotional and like reactive or say hurtful things. Like I didn't want to be seen in that. And so often, even though if a partner were to express like, hey, I feel this way when you do this thing, I would be like, oh, well, like you do the same thing too, right? That is unintentional emotional invalidation. Here's how the Gottmans define defensiveness. It's victimizing yourself to ward off a perceived attack or to reverse the blame. And you might not intentionally be doing this. You might not even see that you're doing this. You might not use the words like you're reversing the blame. And you might be like, oh, that's a lot. But when you really hear that of like, well, you do the same thing, that is reversing the blame. It's like, I want to tell you about my hurt. And it's like, oh, well, while we're talking about that, let's talk about how you do the same thing, how you hurt me here, how you said this thing here. And oh, by the way, actually, there's all these other things that I've been suppressing that I didn't want to tell you in the moment because I didn't want to bring up conflict and didn't want to rock the boat. But since you're rocking the boat now, I guess like I'm just going to bring it all to you so that I'm not in the wrong. Notice how this is just another shadow of how the victim mentality comes to play. And when we are the victim, when we are putting ourselves as the victim, we are losing our own power and we are asking the person who has come to us who with their hurt to now heal us, right? We're asking somebody who feels hurt by us, who feels unseen by us, who feels unloved by us, to ask them to now hold our pain and be our hero, be our savior, so that we don't have to take accountability for making our partners feel a certain way when we did not intend to, right? When you say, I'm sorry, when you say, oh, I can see how that would have made you feel that way, and I'm really sorry for that, and you want to so reflexively be like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, you're making their feelings wrong, and in doing so, furthering their pain, furthering their distrust in you, and feeling like they can't come to you with their feelings because you're just going to invalidate them, you're just going to pass it off, you're not going to be able to take responsibility, you're alone in your feelings, you're alone in your hurt, and it's up to you to not feel that way, right? Like it's kind of this feeling of, well, if you just didn't bring up anything wrong, then our relationship would be fine, which is bullshit. It's actually such an act of love and service for somebody to bring up challenges that they're seeing and that they're feeling in a relationship, because it allows you the opportunity to repair a conflict. It gives you the opportunity to actually get closer, to get more vulnerable, to understand each other, to feel more seen, and to actually build the relationship. That is what the actual work is. That is how a strong relationship is created. When a relationship does not have that attention put into it and you expect it to just be having fun together, like laughing together, loving each other, having sex together, and like whatever, that is not actually build more closeness and connection. It's through the understandings of somebody's inner workings that allows you to create the sense of security and stability in the relationship, that you really know somebody and that you're able to be known in the relationship as well. So if your partner comes to you with something, do your best to just take responsibility for those things, to be accountable in your actions. And if you feel like they're incredibly unreasonable, that you didn't do anything wrong, that they're just like being moody or whatever or anything, Learn to accept your partner's perspective and apologize. People's moods fluctuate all the time. Your moods fluctuate all the time. You would hate being misunderstood, right? And this is, right, just notice here where if you want to get defensive, that this is also one of those things where you could be reversing the blame, right? Like how you do this thing too. That perspective, when you do it with yourself, is coming from a place of empathy, right? When you can try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it is not to dismiss your feelings or how if you would feel hurt doing something else and that makes it okay for just you guys to do it to each other. No, it's about being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand their pain and where they're coming from so you can meet them with empathy. But it's not to perpetuate a cycle of like hurting each other, if that makes sense. Like if in arguments, you're constantly like name calling each other or you're threatening to break up or you're taking things to the extreme and you both are doing this to each other, realizing that you both do this to each other doesn't make it okay. It makes it so that you can allow yourself to see, oh yeah, like that's hurtful when I do that and I see how I hurt you when I do that. Right? And like how I feel hurt when you do that. So let's find a better way to do this instead so that we don't do these things anymore. It's not just constantly apologizing. The best apology is change. Genuinely changing your behavior and wanting to be better. That is the actual apology. So the third horseman is contempt. And this is described as attacking the sense of self with an intent to insult or abuse. And I think criticism and contempt kind of go hand in hand with this, where enough criticism can turn into contempt, right? It can turn into like, I am better than you and you are worse than me, right? And it's coming from a really low vibration place where if you think about attacking someone's sense of self, we see how people's sense of self is attached to money, for example, right? And if you were to bring up how your partner is not contributing as much to the relationship as you are because you make more money than them and you pay for more of the bills and you do all this stuff, that is inherently telling your partner that they're inadequate, that you don't see them as, like, you don't respect them as much, you don't value them as much, and that is contempt, right? Same thing if you were like to both be really religious, for example. If you were to be like, oh, well, I go to church every single Sunday and you don't. Anytime that you're coming from this point of like contempt or resentment for your partner, like they're just like this awful person, like you're just like not a good father, you're just not a good partner, you're just not a good human, you're just not a good enough whatever, right? And you're trying to tell them that maybe out of your own frustration or whatever it may be, that is incredibly hurtful to not only your partner, but to the partnership as a whole, because that builds distrust, that takes away the safety, which is fundamental in a relationship. And without safety, a relationship will crumble. Now, what happens if you see this pattern in yourself, you really care about your partner, you don't want to do this as much, and you're working on it, but you might slip up sometimes. Okay, there is a buffer that you can create. And I would say do your best to just get rid of that contempt, right? Really start to rewire that. And the way to do that is to build a culture of appreciation. It's really being able to see gratitude for each other. Because contempt, think about contempt like somebody who overstayed their welcome at your home, right? They're like, oh, can I stay over for the weekend? I'm going to be in town. And it's like, oh yeah, of course. And then they're like, oh, actually, I really want to stay another week just to like hang out and like see people, see the city, whatever. Is that okay with you? And then you're like, yeah, sure, because you don't want to be seen as that bad person. But then over time, you're just like, oh my gosh, this person's not cleaning up. This person's like eating all my groceries. This person's like just in my space and like they're inviting people over now. Oh my God. Like, and instead of just telling them that you are overwhelmed or telling them like, hey, maybe go find another space, you start to build this like resentment towards them, right? And you start to now see them in a really negative light. You start to build contempt for them because now it's more than just criticism on their character. Now you really start to see them as like a bad person, right? Now you start to like see them as just like, oh, they're just an awful like friend, an awful person. They're just so disrespectful and like so inconsiderate of my space all the time, right? You start to make like snarky comments at them and all that stuff. That's how contempt builds. So the antithesis to this is to be able to appreciate each other, to find gratitude for each other, remember the reasons of why your life is better because of this person, why you've chosen to be in this partnership together. That goes a long way. I have seen myself struggle with this a lot because I did not grow up in a culture of appreciation for one another. I grew up in a culture of duty. Like the father is the breadwinner, the mother is the child rearer, she cooks, she cleans, right? He just makes money and makes sure that like we have enough. And then the children, like your duty is to get good grades and get to a good college, right? It's just like that is your job, right? Those are your duties. And when you are just operating from a place of duty, you don't really necessarily have this sense of culture of appreciation, because the culture is more like you're either doing your duty and you're being good, like you're doing good in your role, or you're not doing your duty, you're falling short of your duties, and now people can blame you, right? Now, oh, you're not doing your part, you're not pulling your weight. And that breeds contempt, that breeds criticism. In a culture of appreciation, though, it's not about just like you have this duty, it's that you've chosen to take on this role, right? You have chosen to be in this relationship, you have chosen to love one another, you have chosen to grow together, you have chosen to commit to one another. And because of those things, you have responsibilities. When you have responsibilities, it is about your ability to respond to those things, right? And so if you were to be falling short on certain things, it's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you can't do those things. You can actually meet your partner, meet yourself with generous assumptions that maybe they're overwhelmed in their work. Maybe they are going through something health-wise. Maybe, it's imbalanced and like they're taking on too much. Maybe they're trying to take on a role of responsibility that is not well suited for their personal strengths, right? And when you're doing those things, you can now collaborate on those roles. Maybe one person makes way more money than the other person in a relationship, and so a 50-50 financial situation doesn't work, right? And instead, like one person is really appreciates taking care of the home. Maybe they don't mind picking up groceries or like something else, right? Like they can maybe take on a little bit more emotional labor or physical labor within that relationship dynamic to keep the balance in the relationship. Or maybe the other person just decides that they can fully take on the responsibility and they don't have to change anything, right? They want to just help out and take things off their plate, and they have the capacity to do so. They're happy to do so, and there's no contempt there, right? It's just, hey, let me just take care of it. It's no problem. And when that's met with gratitude and with appreciation and not like a sense of guilt or inadequacy in the other person, then there's also so much more love that's built. Like I know for myself, when I feel loved and taken care of, then I feel a lot happier in a relationship. I feel much more loving, and then I'm able to show up with so much more love and light and happiness that my partner gets to enjoy. Same thing with them. Like when they feel loved and appreciated by me, they're able to be so much more loving, light, and joyful in our relationship, making it that much better. Now, the last thing here is stonewalling. And stonewalling is described as withdrawing to avoid conflict and convey disapproval, distance, and separation. The antithesis to this is psychological self-soothing. So stonewalling I see really a lot in avoidant attachments, and I've seen this in myself as well. Like I will be the first to raise my hand in saying that I feel like I have experienced all of the unhealthy behaviors. I have been on both ends of so many different dynamics. And so like I have no shame in all of these things, because I realize like, first of all, being able to even recognize that within myself is such a win, because me being able to recognize that in myself means that now I have the opportunity to actually do something with this awareness so that I can have healthy relationships with the people that I care about, and also with myself, right? I also get to understand the other person so much better. So now I can protect myself also from relationships that exhibit these qualities, or be able to convey my needs, what's going on, what I'm not happy with so much more emotional intelligence and so much more awareness. Now, with stonewalling here, this is also where I'm going to talk about the trauma awareness piece of honest communication, where it's not just the emotional intelligence of being able to have empathy, being able to understand your different levels of emotion, being able to discern things like anger versus frustration versus impatience, right? And being able to actually genuinely convey accurately what is it that you're feeling, what is it that you're needing, and what is it that you're wanting. The trauma awareness piece comes from understanding we all have baggage, right? We all have things that have created psychological wounds or scarring, emotional scarring that we are all just living with, but we cannot see. And so with that trauma awareness here, with the stonewalling, we can recognize where, okay, a partner might be trying to pull away or not be responsive when we express like a need or something because they have this defense mechanism of they don't want to get closer, right? Like if they feel criticized or something, they shut down. If they don't feel like they're being seen, they shut down. If they feel like they're getting too close and they want to like back away, right? That's because they don't feel safe. This is not true for all circumstances, obviously. I'm just giving out some examples of what it could be. And this withdrawal of like, okay, well, I'm just not going to talk about this. And the stonewalling where somebody just wants to withdraw from conflict, they just don't want to deal with it. They like have this intolerance to being in it. Or you can have compassion for it. If you see this within yourself, really recognize your own need to be able to psychologically self-soothe, where you recognize like this is not an attack on you. This does not mean that the relationship is going to end. That does not mean that, you know, you're going to be punished in some way. Like it's being able to open up your capacity to handle disagreements, misunderstandings, and know like, hey, I can take a break, right? You can tell the other person how you're feeling, that you need a break to just calm your nervous system down, do something else, maybe clean the house a little bit, maybe go for a walk, maybe just take some deep breaths and be able to come back to the conversation. It's being able to tell the other person because you love them, because you want it to work, because you are, you know, a good person, because you want to show up with love, and that it's just challenging right now to do so. It's okay to just tell them how you feel. It's okay to just tell them, I'm overwhelmed right now and I want to shut down. I feel myself doing that. It's not going to be productive. Can we take a break? Right? And it's up to your partner to then just be able to respond to that. And if they're caught up in their own thing too, then it's like, you know, you can still just leave, right? You can be like, I just really need a break right now. I'll come back in like 5 minutes, but please, I just need the space, right? Hopefully, one or both of you have enough emotional intelligence and compassion for each other to give each other just that space. And if you don't, I would say that's a challenging dynamic to maybe rethink. But just notice like you have permission to tell someone just like you feel shut down right now and you don't know what it is that you need. Maybe space is what you need, right? I think so many things, so many disagreements, so much misunderstanding can be solved with just, or maybe not solved, but really like met with much more empathy if people can just feel safe to express what is it that they're feeling in the current moment, what are they thinking in the current moment, and not expect things to change, not expect the other person to fix it or to solve it, but just so that there's awareness of where certain people's states are, and for you to recognize what state you were in when a certain situation was happening, when a conflict was happening, so that now when you are both in a regulated space, you can come back together and regulate, apologize to each other of like, oh, you know, I'm sorry that I responded in this way. I was really feeling really shut down. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean to hurt you. This is what I actually meant to say. This is what I actually believe. And I hope that we can move forward with it, right? Like that is how you actually give space to repair, is through this awareness. Another thing I want to mention here when it comes to this communication and trauma awareness is a matter of maybe something more personal to me, but I think that is valuable just for everyone to understand for themselves, is the awareness that like so many women feel unsafe. To this day, there are so many women who just are constantly running in fear and uncertainty, and even in partnerships in which they trust their partners and feel loved by their partners, there's still moments of distrust. There's still moments of skepticism. There's still moments of doubt, and that is normal. Not saying that is good, right? Or that we should just accept that, because I think just because something is normal or something that is very like, you know, prevalent does not mean that we shouldn't try to work on those things, you know, and we shouldn't try to change those things. And I bring this up because I feel like there is such a big calling for men to be safe spaces for women. It is a man's responsibility to be a safe space for women. I don't think we need to just keep throwing out more statistics of how many women are sexually harassed or assaulted or whatever by men. We all should know by now how just a man walking on a street where a woman is walking on the street alone as well can trigger so much anxiety in the woman. And just because a man has the knowledge of this does not mean that they are aware of how their presence actually impacts the women in their lives, or even the women that they don't know who they just interact with on a day-to-day level in society. And I saw this TikTok recently in which a man was interviewing other men on what do they do to make women feel safer. And it could be the women that are not in their lives, right? And somebody said like how they will walk to the, like they will cross the street if they see that there is a woman who's walking alone, walking on the same street as them, right? And that is like an awareness piece of like, oh yeah, like women feel threatened by just like the presence of a man. And so I know that I might be perceived as a threat. So let me try to signal that I'm a safe space, right? That I'm not trying to harm, I'm not a threat. And the onus is on the men to do this. There are men who just don't think about that thing, and it's no fault of their own, I don't think, because I don't think we think about it enough as a society. But when you really think about being considerate, and men who say that they're not all men, it's really on you to be a safe space for women. It's really on you to show a woman from the phases of just being strangers to courting somebody and really being cordial in your courting, right? Where you are signaling to her, and recognize this too. Like there are women who are still operating from a lot of like their wounds and their shadows, where in their own conditioning, where women will think that like, oh, it's attractive when a man is really like pursuing you and not leaving you alone and whatever. And there's like such bad narratives that have been prevalent for so long of women loving the bad guy or like the bad boy, or, you know, like all these unhealthy dynamics, and how like women want you to make the first move for like everything and all the stuff. And it's like, okay, it's also like on women to do that deconditioning work, obviously. And also when either a man or a woman, like just in general, when people uphold these standards within themselves and this emotional intelligence and this awareness, this social awareness within themselves, and they operate from a place of integrity, it uplifts everybody, right? So even in the courting phase, I don't think a man should be making this like move to try to kiss a woman on the first date, for example. I personally have felt really uncomfortable when this has happened. And I also have been in the situation in which I question if somebody really genuinely is interested in me if they're not trying to like kiss me on the first date. What I have noticed is that this is a signal of safety and trust. When you are taking a woman out on a date and you don't make any physical advances, your interest in her is genuine, is pure. You're just there to be a listening ear, to be interested in what she's saying, to try to connect with her, to understand her, and for you to also be seen, for you to express who it is that you are, to, you know, just be there for the connection, and you're not expecting anything of her, especially physically or sexually. That signals trust. That signals like positive intention. That signals that you are there for the right reasons. And it allows her to lead in the relationship at that beginning phases, especially the physical aspect of it. That is what really safe men do. That is what men who feel secure in themselves do. Because if you need a woman to show you that she is sexually or physically interested in you, for you to trust that she is into you, you gotta ask yourself why. And you might get stories like, well, you know, I don't want to just be friend zoned. Or you might just be like, well, I, you know, want to make sure that my investment is worth it. That like, you know, well, I'm paying for dinner or I'm paying for this. And so therefore, like, you know, I need to see that she's taking me seriously as a romantic interest. I have literally gotten this from men before. Like, I hate to admit it, but I specifically remember one person that I went on like a third date with, and they made a move to kiss me, and I was like so shocked because it felt like it came out of left field. It was just like kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, and I was like, whoa. I was like, why did you do that? And he was like, I just wanted to know that you were also like sexually interested in me, and that, you know, you weren't just trying to use me in some way or you know, friend zone me. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, no consideration to maybe how I would have taken it, no consideration to maybe whether or not I've been sexually assaulted in the past, no consideration to consent, no like conversation even. Like, you didn't even think to just ask me if I was into you like that. You just didn't think to ask me if I was attracted to you. You just like had to go and literally take my physicality for your sake. Like, that's fucked up, okay? So yeah, men, like, I know in the movies and stuff, like, it looks so sexy and like, oh, you might think women want you to just grab them and kiss them passionately, but like in the real world, like when you really understand what is going on in the fabrics of society and you understand that there's so many women who don't feel safe, this is your opportunity to show up as a safe space, right? This is your opportunity to actually genuinely show that you are not all men. Learn how to compliment a woman on her physical appearance without making it sound super sexual or creepy or like you're trying to make an advance on them. Learn how to have respectful conversations with people. Learn how to be playful with somebody without making it overtly sexual or uncomfortable. Learn to read their cues. Learn to attune to emotions. Learn to ask questions. Learn to ask for consent. Like, do the work because it is on you. And don't think that this stops in the courtship phase. The reason why it's even in here in general in the partnership phase is because when you have partnered with a woman, that does not stop, right? The need for safety does not stop. The need for consent does not stop. The need for emotional attunement does not stop. Like, it is a continuous process to continuously show and validate to your partner that you are a safe and loving space, that you are understanding, just like how, it is a continuous process for her to continuously show up and love you and be understanding and empathetic to you and nurturing to you and all the things and supportive, right? Like, it is a continuous process of showing interest in each other, of showing love and care for each other, of showing consideration for each other. When you're able to genuinely be a safe presence for a woman, trust me, you will not be unhappy. A woman needs to feel safe in herself, in her body, in a partnership with you in order to want to have sex with you, in order to fully surrender and to be able to enjoy sex, in order to want to give pleasure, not from a place of obligation or from a place of to like swat your advances. Like, can you think about like how awful a sex life would be if one person only wants it and the other person feels obligated to give it? Like, that's just breeding grounds for contempt. Think about how beautiful, how incredible, how orgasmic a relationship is when both people feel safe to surrender into each other, to give to each other, to want each other, and to like be magnetic towards each other because they genuinely feel safe, seen, and heard in their relationship. So just to summarize, let the woman lead in the physical advances and let her lead the pacing in that. And you just as a man affirm that your kind gestures and your interest in her and all the things you're doing are purely from your desire to do so without pressure and obligation. Ask her how she feels. Be attentive and responsive to her thoughts and her feelings. Remember, you don't have to fix anything for her or do like exorbitant amounts for her. She just needs to trust you and be able to lean on you, feel like you are a safe space for her. If you are in a partnership, notice if your woman is becoming bossy or demanding or controlling, that is a fear expression, that's her being her masculine, because there is some element in the relationship where it's messing with the polarity, where she feels like she is disappointed by you, she can't trust you, or there's something going on there that's the underlying cause. It's not because she's just trying to control you or change you or whatever. Oftentimes it's just coming from a place where she does not feel safe. Now, my last note on this is also to women to understand and empathize with men that they have been steeped in a culture of shame, of suppression, and of violence, where oftentimes sports was like the only time in which they were able to express their emotions, where they have learned that yelling is okay or that physicality is okay. And it's never okay for a man to lay his hands on you. Okay, I will die on that hill. But just know that that suppression will come out through other forms, maybe within stonewalling or defensiveness or criticism. Men, when they are activated in a relationship and committed to a relationship, right, they will have a desire to please. They will have a desire to protect and to provide. And their core wound is a form of shame, right? It's this desire to be able to meet up to expectations, and when they're unable to, they might feel shame, right? They also have a core wound of wanting to be mothered, and so if they are, feeling shamed and then going into that defensiveness where they're victimizing themselves and kind of wanting you to save them, wanting you to kind of be like, oh, it's okay or whatever, right? Recognize that too, and you don't have to give into it, but it's to be able to recognize and see that and have awareness of like, okay, I see this pain, I see where you're at, I see the shame behind this all, and I'm here to help support you in growing in that, and you are still responsible and accountable for your actions, right? Like, it's really inspiring them to step into their power instead of trying to help them express their own power. It's not like you do the work for them. It's like you are inspiring them to step into their own power, and it's up to them to rise to that challenge. One thing that I found really helpful in my relationships has been to do check-ins. And this is also something that the Gottmans have a great resource on, where they have something called the State of the Union meeting. And this is where you're able to come together and just reflect and evaluate the last week of the relationship. You start with giving each other appreciation. Again, cultivating that culture of appreciation, of emotional attunement, right? Checking in with how are you feeling today and how are you feeling about the relationship, right? It's being able to start with their appreciation for each other, start off with what went well during the week. And then from that place, being able to bring up, well, what didn't go so well, right? Like, what hurts do you have? What pains do you have? What misunderstandings were there? And you being able to express what your needs are that maybe you would want. And then ending with the question of what can I do to make you feel more loved next week, right? That one question of what can I do to make you feel more loved, it was something that I really appreciated in previous relationships. And it was something that when I really geared my mind towards like, oh yeah, my intention is also to love somebody else, right? I'm not here just to receive love. I'm also here to give love. I'm also here to be a loving partner to my person that I've chosen. And so my responsibility, my desire to be a good partner also comes from me wanting to love somebody in the way that they want to be loved. Not just in the way that I feel like I can give love to somebody, that I want to give love, but also being able to give love in a way that the other person will receive and appreciate and see for themselves, because that is what they need. I find that oftentimes it can be really challenging to have dedicated time because life can get so busy and crazy and chaotic and all this stuff, especially if you start to have kids and families, right? And if both of you have careers, it can be really challenging to feel like you have committed time to be able to work on the relationship together. So just to have a weekly check-in time where you have like not just like a date, right, to connect, because here's the thing, the weekly date idea, like, and always be dating your partner, I believe in that. However, when life starts to get really busy, when you have a lot of responsibilities, when you're both building and growing and all these things, the weekly date thing, if you're not in a good place, the weekly date's not going to be great, right? Like, it's like, think about if you're to schedule sex, like, you might not be in the mood and that might not make it great, right? You might be annoyed or frustrated or be stressed or whatever. Like, just having a weekly date is not going to solve problems. And this goes even into a bigger picture, which is a tangent I could go on, but like when people talk about how they're really stressed and they just want to go on vacation or they just want to, go out or all this stuff, and they schedule like fun time for themselves, when genuinely what the problem is, the root cause of their stress is that they are unhappy, unfulfilled, and that there's healing that needs to be done, right? The time that they actually need to be scheduling for themselves is not like a week-long vacation in the Bahamas. The time that they actually need to be scheduling themselves is time with like a therapist or a coach or a healer or a group program or something in which they can understand themselves better, so that they can meet themselves with more emotional intelligence, where they can meet themselves with more skills, grow their capacity to handle conflict within themselves, within being able to communicate themselves more effectively, and being able to get clear on what are their desires for their life is, what is out of alignment, what they need to let go of, what are their negative habits, and like how can they actually create positive habits, right? Like, those are the things that they need to be scheduling in. And instead we think like, oh no, we just need a vacation, we just need to go shopping, we just need to go like to the bar and drink with friends. Like, those things, not knocking them, not saying that they're always coming from a bad place. I'm just saying, like, genuinely, a lot of times what I see is that people's stresses and their suffering is created from internal things, and external results never solve internal problems. So same thing goes for relationships. You might think externally, oh, I'll just like buy them a gift because they were upset with me. Oh, I'm just going to have sex with him and like not apologize. Oh, I'm just going to like plan a date so that we can feel connected, even though we both feel ignored and we've been like busy with so many things and we haven't even talked about, that fight that we had last week because we've just been so busy. Like that is why this dedicated time to actually meet and check in with each other is so valuable, and you can actually just connect and grow together, because that's actually hitting at the root cause of the suffering, of the problems, and that's going to make your relationship so much more stronger, so much more enjoyable, and it can lead to, who knows, maybe some spicy time, maybe like a great night, a date night, whatever it is. But just please, please, please do not plan fun things in lieu of the hard conversations. The hard conversations I find aren't necessarily even hard. They're actually some of the most fun things that I look forward to when I'm in relationships. And like I've trained myself to really like find so much joy and excitement in personal development, in growth, in learning, and understanding myself and other people, because that I have found is truly the key to having such fulfilling, loving relationships in my life. I had so much fun and joy even just writing down the notes in this. I was in such a flow creating this episode that I hope that you feel the intention that went behind this one. I tend to be much more of a free-flowing person in which I kind of channel whatever comes up, and definitely there's an element to that. But in this episode in particular, I just felt so pulled to really distill down so much of what I've learned and what I've gone through in my relationships, because I have found for myself I don't have any challenges in manifesting positive relationships into my life. I've definitely manifested negative ones that are triggering, right? And that I have grown from and healed from. But in doing so, like I've also seen how much of my growth edge is found within relationships, how much I have found about myself, about my likes and dislikes, my needs, and, the things that I prefer within relationships. And there's so much talk on social media about how like, you need to know your attachment styles and you need to be healed or whatever, or people still living kind of like, it feels like in the dark ages in which they are very rooted in like the man's role and the woman's role and, really archaic beliefs of relationship. There's just so much noise online that I really hope that this can be a resource in which it doesn't feel like I'm telling you what you should do, what's right, what's wrong, what's healthy and unhealthy, but rather really giving you the power back to have the relationships that you genuinely want to by making it about you and not so much the other person. I really hope that you take this as information that you can use to empower yourself to feel like you are in charge of your romantic relationship, your romantic destiny, your partnerships, and also your general well-being. Because I have found this for myself, like relationships are the thing that impacts me the most. I find it hard to focus on the things within my career or, even my health when my relationships aren't right, or someone I love is suffering, or, I'm in a relationship that is not in my highest good. And I found how so much more of my life is amplified, like how much more joy is amplified, how much more I want to give love and gratitude to life when I'm in an aligned partnership. And I want people to be able to experience that side of things. I want people to be able to grow in their skill sets and for all of us to have so much more healthier, happier relationships with each other, and to stop putting so much pressure on ourselves to have like the longest relationship or to get married and all these things. I want us to be able to celebrate each other in our successes, where we can trust one another when somebody says that that they're getting married, that they're happy in it, that it's going to last, that they've been intentional with it. I want to be able to live in a society where we all trust one another, that like if someone comes to us with relationship challenges, that we can meet that with compassion, that we don't have to tell them what to do because we trust that they have their own power, that they're in tune with it, that they're just looking for maybe some feedback. But I think the more we can learn to embody these principles of healthy communication and conflict resolution, of de-shaming ourselves and whatnot, we're going to be able to live in a completely different society that's run off of trust and love and honesty. So that is my bigger vision, I guess, in all of this. But I hope that you found this helpful. And if you did, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment below, share it with a friend, share it on social media, like do all the things that you already know can help support and, If you feel called to leave a review, then that obviously helps as well to help other people be aware of these resources and shows like this. And just know that I am rooting for you, rooting for your partnership, rooting for the incredible conscious partnership that you are calling in if you're not in one right now. And genuinely, I am here to help support you. So if you need anything, please reach out to me on Instagram at Jen the Soul Whisperer. If you need any more individual support, I have my one-on-one sessions that I offer on my site at jensui.com. And with that, may you listen to your soul whispers, and until next time, stay well.